Okay, this is going to be take one of my information of how to work the Flight Simulator 11. So, as you know, I've already logged in, and on the desktop of each computer, the three-screen computer is the scenery, and you'll notice that there's X-Plane 10 icon and an X-Plane 11 icon. The same thing is true on the panel computer, which is an X-Plane 10 and X-Plane 11. So first I would start the panel computer because it is the computer that tells the scenery computer what to do and where it's going to be at. So you just double click on that one, and while that's loading in, you go over to the scenery one and you double click on that one, and then you wait. As you'll notice, the two different computers are now loading in X-Plane 11. This is the screen that you will see. On both computers, you'll see there's a choice of load default situation, new flight, load save flight, and flight school, and change settings. At the very bottom, you'll see an X that says quit X-Plane. That's down here bottom left. If you want to just load the default airplane, that currently in X-Plane 11 is a Cessna 172 sitting at Glendale. The same thing is true on the scenery computer. You can load default situation. So I would start with the panel computer first because it's the slowest computer. If you want to load a new flight, you can click on new flight, and then you will get this flight configuration screen. It gives you all the aircraft that are currently in X-Plane 11 and shows them as I'm scrolling up and down in a picture format. So you can pick whatever one you want, and as you click on it, it will highlight that one. The top group are what's called the favorites, but down below that there's a lot more to choose from that are probably not flown that much, so those are down as you scroll further down. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick off to the right, there's the airports that you can pick from. Now, on X-Plane 11, the nice thing about it, mostly it is alphabetical. So if you type in, just start typing in, say, Glendale, and it'll give you all kinds of things that kind of come up with Glendale. So if you want to pick Glendale Muni, come down like that. You can go up to Customize, upper right part of this flight configuration. If you click there, it'll give you a choice to pick where you're going to start from. Here's the runway, here's the ramp area. So if you were to pick right now, this little blue dot is sitting on the end of runway 01. If you picked in here, it will tell you that it's the terminal start. If you use the scroll knob, you can make this bigger, so if it's a complex airport, you could see more, and then you can drag it around holding down the left mouse button. And so you can go back. So we're going to say terminal start, and then we'll say confirm. So if I was to fly the Bonanza, we would now be starting at Glendale Muni at the terminal. In here, just below the choice of airports, there's a choice of weather and time of day. Currently, there seems to be somewhat of a bug in X-Plane 11. Normally you should be able to click on Customize, and it would give you a choice of changing weather as far as the overcast or clear, or what the winds are, etc. But right now, your only choice is to take the slider and move it all the way over to overcast, foggy, all the way back to clear. Same thing, time of day. Now this one does work, so you can customize by clicking on Customize. It'll come up with picking a time of day or tracking the real world date and time. If you don't want to see real world date and time, you would uncheck this button that says track real world date and time. So I'm going to leave that show. I'm going to go done, and it would say start flight. But I want to show you another way. This same thing works up here on the scenery panel. If you go to new flight, you'll get the exact same situation for flight configuration. But I want to show you another quicker way in for people that are just flying the 172. If you say load default situation, currently the default airplane is the 172 at Glendale, and you'll notice as soon as I clicked on that, it just went right ahead and started loading default situation. And same thing up here, default situation for the scenery. And we will see after things get a chance to boot up. Now I'm not quite sure whether it's in the video screen, but off to the right you've got your instrument panels for setting your com and nav frequencies, the altitude that you might want to climb to on the Autopilot, but that will go into more advanced settings later on. So right now we're just waiting for things to load up. As you'll notice, the scenery is a way faster computer. You'll get a block up here that says sound system could not be initiated. That's because we're using HDMI to run these screens, and it doesn't have sound set. So you can just click on understood twice, that'll go away. Now you'll notice on the panel computer, here we are sitting with the 172 at Glendale. So if you want, this is one other thing that I have worked into it. On the keyboard, on the numpad, the number 5 is a center view. So I'll show you what happens. If you hit 5, it brings up the instrument panel without having to scroll around or mess around with anything. Same situation in 10. If you put your little hand, turn the mouse cursor into a hand over the yoke, it'll turn off the yoke and get it out of the way. Now, the fun thing about this is that if you're flying along on downwind, you can press 4 and you can look out the left side. If you press 5, you go right back to the panel. 6, you look out to the right side. 5, back to panel. 2, you look down so you can kind of see what's happening a little lower down on the instrument panel. And if you go to 0, then that gives you a chance, I'll move the mouse around here, to be able to change the fuel cutoff switch here. So if you need to do that, you would just hit 10. Hit 5, you're right back to the panel. 7 gives you a 45-degree look out to the left. 9 gives you a 45-degree look out to the right. And 8 just kind of puts you up above the airplane, looking kind of down. Back 5 goes right back in the instrument panel. So that's kind of a quick way to get around in there. Now you'll notice that everything seems to be kind of dark here because you need to turn on or at least cycle the Avionics master switch, which is over here on the hardware. So if you click that on, you'll notice that all of a sudden things light up. If you really want to see things happen over here, you can just click these switches and that'll kind of get the hardware panel working. If things are kind of dim, down here there is the panel lights. So if you kind of scroll, put that mouse over that thing and then kind of pull it up and down, what we should see, but isn't seem to be working now. Normally, there we go. That'll turn up the panel lights. As you see, you get some, you make sure that's right over that, and you can see that you get some panel lights in through there. Okay, so here we are ready to roll. After that, it's basically the same as X-Plane 10. When you are in a view and you do really just want to kind of slide sideways a little bit, you can still use the arrow keys right here. You can go left and right like that. You can also get rid of this yoke by putting a hand over that. You can go down and up like so. But if you hit 5, it just goes right back there. If you've gotten things really messed up and it's all off cattywampus up into something and you just can't figure out what the heck's going on, and you've forgotten to hit 5, if you hit W, that goes to the default view. W is the default view, V is the brake, the parking brake. B is just plain brakes. So now that you're back into the default view, hit 5 again, back to the instrument panel. So there's really, other than that, there is nothing new about what's happening here. Now if you decide, okay, I really want to go see I want to do a different airplane. If you move the mouse to the top, you'll have various choices up here. Now the first choice is File. If you run it all the way to the bottom, Quit. That will get you out of the program completely. If you want to go over and change airplanes, you go all the way over to the right side. There's a little airplane in that drop-down panel. If you click on that, you go back to that flight configuration panel that I was showing you. And therefore you can then go pick a different airplane. Now say for instance you say, gee, I'd like to fly the G1000. So just click on the G1000 like that. That brightens that little pane up. You say, I still want to stay at Glendale, so that's fine. I want to take the weather to clear or just maybe high cirrus. So I've gone down here, moved it to like so, and you go down to the very bottom and say start new flight. And so then it'll ask you again, end current flight, and say yes, start new flight. So now you're having a G1000 panel. The scenery will jump around and finally coordinate itself. You can go back and get rid of the yokes like so. Hit number 5, brings in the G1000. If you hit on this situation, because it's a different kind of panel setup, number 2 will take you sideways over to the what's called the MFD, multifunction display. The first one is called the Pfd Pilot. So 0 still looks down at the floor, so you can change your fuel tank settings. 5 will take you back in here. 7 still the same way as before. 9 out to the side. This goes to the side and back to the center. 3 will give you a look. If you have an airplane, you can actually look out the back and not be looking at a bulkhead. 3 will take you to a 45-degree looking backwards to the side. 1 will take you to the other side, looking to the other side, to the left side. So 5 is back into the panel. In here, the Pfd, this is your airspeed indicator right there. This is your altitude that you're at right here. This is your vertical speed indicator right there. And this is considered an HSI, horizontal situation indicator. Currently it's looking at the GPS information, and so you would fly towards the needle that's gone to the side. This is your heading bug right here. There's a couple of ways to change the heading bug. You can come over here to heading, and you'll watch this little blue heading. It'll start shifting around like so. And you can also scroll it around by just taking, as long as you have it over the item and the hand is over there, then you can end up scrolling around. But it's easier to just plain click on it and let it go like so. If you really quickly want to get the heading, if you put the hand, not the arrow, the hand over the heading knob, and you click it once, it will bring it right back to whatever your heading is at that time. Nav frequencies, which are up here, are by the outer inner knob here. This sets the big numbers, this sets the small numbers. Same thing, com. Outer one sets the big numbers, this sets the small numbers. Course, if you change this around and you happen to be in a situation where you could change this needle here, which we will go over to CDI, localizer like that. Now you can scroll that around by changing the course. Oh, there's a slight difference in, oh, that's the barometric. I'm sorry, I was a little off that. That's the barometric. The center one is the course. There we go. So now once I get my needle on there, you can set that the way you want. The outer one sets the barometric pressure, which is down here. So if you were saying 2992, if you were standard barometric pressure, be like so. And if it was a standard day at Glendale, we would have the Glendale altitude here. Beyond that, things start to getting a little more complex. As you'll see on the far right side, instead of like the 6-pack panel, you now have your engine RPM here, your fuel flow here, oil pressure, oil temperature, what the exhaust gas temperature is, your vacuum, your fuel quantity, your left and right tanks, and engine hours down here, your electrical system, how your battery's doing, etc. This is the audio panel in between. And all these things can be gone into. If anybody is really interested, I will give a more advanced class. Down at the very bottom here in green, it shows your transponder. It's on 1200 and it's on standby. If you wanted, because of the way the G1000 works, you would go over to transponder where it says exponder, click on that. You would be able to say click altitude, and that will change this from standby to altitude readout. So then they know, center knows what's going on. This shows you where the flight plan, because this thing was set for Scottsdale, the flight plan currently thinks you're in Scottsdale. That shows up over here if you press flight plan. And if I can get my little, yeah, this doesn't want to kind of sit on it. But normally you would be able to click flight plan over here. You would get a flight plan in this window here. Anyway, so other than that, everything else is the same. If you seem to add power and you can't seem to go anywhere, then what you really need to do is check right here for this little handle. Actually, it'd be easier to see this way. And you'll notice that it's pulled back like so. That means the parking brake is on. So if you hit V, you'll notice how that just snapped off, and now we should be able to roll around and move around on the ramp, like so. The new rudder pedals that we have, as you'll notice, are much smoother in how you control the aircraft. Instead of the jerkiness, you can just put a little bit of heel pressure in, and things just don't all of a sudden jump to one side or the other. So we'll just sort of follow along here into the taxiway. As you'll notice, it's a much smoother arrangement. So we'll put a little power to it. Now, as usual, one of the mistakes that I've seen people making is that when they decide they're going to take off, they just jam the throttles full forward and wonder why they're snaking back and forth all over the runway. The yoke, the joystick, is labeled. This button here says flaps. That'll put 10 degrees of flaps down. And got toe brakes as usual. Come back out here. And I have to hold short line for 0119. Put the power to it a little bit. If you really wanted to see what your flap position was doing, you can just go to number 2 and roll this thing out here a little bit. Actually, number 0, and that will show you. I think I'll recalibrate 0 so it's not looking down so vertically. But here is your flap position. I will fix that so that you're looking more directly on it rather than trying to figure out what this is saying down here. Okay, so anyway, like I said, slowly put the power to it, and it'll be a lot easier to not have to deal so much with your torque steer wanting to pull you off to the left side. But just make sure, as you all should know, you need full power to get off the ground, and try not to drag the brakes with your toes on the toe brake. And so there we are, up, up and away. Just take a quick trip around the pattern, trim the nose down, kind of come back on the power here, keep it at about 80, flaps coming up. And we'll make a left turn for left downwind. This is not going to be the prettiest downwind and everything because I just want to keep it in tight so I'm not wasting a lot of time narrating. So airport is over there, runway. One of the problems that we've been running into is sometimes you'll actually have the scenery look the way it did before, of where there was brown dry grass around the airport, but now somehow because of the way they're doing the scenery, there's grass and houses and so on. So I haven't been able to fix that yet. So okay, so we got 10 degrees of flaps here. Trim the nose down a little bit and bring it back to 70. And we're going to turn into a... Now if you want, you can take a look out to the side like that, see? So we can kind of look out through the side. So you could actually kind of look out to the side and still fly forward, but it gets a little tricky that way. So because you'll end up maybe flying too slow or whatever. So we're coming back around again here. So that's a sort of a sloppy base. Now base to final. The handy thing about looking at the side is you want to use that if you're flying downwind. So then you can kind of look sideways and see, where is that airport? Am I pretty well parallel to the runway, or what are we doing here? So anyway, so here we are. As you notice, the rudder pedals, like I said before, make this a lot easier. Let me just kind of see if we can kind of get a smooth landing out of this. And like so. And we'll let it coast down to the next turnoff. I would suggest using the red button for the brakes because it's still kind of hard to keep the equal pressure on the toe brakes. It's possible, but you really have to kind of modulate it. That red button is over here on the front part of the throttle that says collective. So we'll just kind of coast in here, park it, and get a good parking spot here. Now this is what's kind of handy on the parking. You can turn it over to your sideways view. You can still look out the scenery, but then this way you can kind of line things up as you come to park. So you know you're right next to the airplane next to you. So now just let off the toe brakes, hit the V. That puts the parking brake on, as we can notice by going down and seeing parking brakes on. Okay, so there was a quick trip around Glendale. It's just the basics. To get out of this thing, you would go up to the upper left corner where it says File, click on File, go down to where it says Quit, click on Quit. That'll get you out of that to the desktop. You do the same thing on File, on Scenery, Quit, like so. And then when you're if you're done for the day and you want to log out of the flight sim, you come down to the Windows icon, the lower bottom left. Click on that once. You'll go up the icons that are here to the very top one. If you just hover over it, it'll say Flight Sim 2. Click once there. That'll open up another panel. You just say Sign Out over there. That'll do that. You'll do the exact same thing over on the scenery computer. Go up to the very top, click once, go up to where it says Sign Out, click Sign Out. Now you're out. So log your time.